there's one thing I love, it's Yu-Gi-Oh! And the thing about Yu-Gi-Oh! With me, at least, is, with the game, you may take long breaks, but it's never really goodbye. I'm actually on a whole Yu kick right now, and it's not even the first time. And this resurgence in my interest in Yu-Gi-Oh! Includes not only the game, but the anime. I've been rewatching Duel Monsters along with old GX and 5Ds. And beyond even that, I actually picked up the GX manga. Now, for those of you who don't know, Yu-Gi-Oh! Does indeed have a manga, though the manga versions come out after the anime, with the exception of the Duel Monsters manga, which came out first, and are very different. And there will be some similar characters or story events or elements, but there are also plenty of events that are new or changed. Same with the characters. It's kind of like the super manga. Some changes are good, even great, while some not so great. And since I'm just coming off of it, having literally just read the phone chapter before writing the script, hey future me reading this and audience listening, that's what I wrote down, I thought it'd be fun to make a video going over the manga itself and also comparing it to the anime. First things first, let's go over story. The story. Like I said before, the story of the GX manga is very different from the anime. I likened it to Super's manga before, but they're not the same in a story aspect. Super has some of the same arcs, but with key differences, and there's even a chance that the manga arcs getting animated. The two GXs are completely different though. The manga is basically one long saga with the main villain being the looming threat through it all. Also, spoiler warning, I'm going to be vague with some stuff, but I'm also going to be straight up talking about some story elements and character stuff, so, a little bit of spoilers. Though this first section actually isn't that heavily tied to the overarching story, as we start at the beginning. In chapter 1, we meet our characters. We aren't introduced to them though. Coming from the anime, I already knew about these characters, but it was still a bit odd. But chapter 1 involves Jaden doing a crooked teacher in training. In it we meet, again are introduced to, but meet a few titular characters. That list includes Jaden, Cyrus, Alexis, Chaz, and Crowler. You're also introduced to Jaden's deck. He still wields an elemental hero deck, but the cards he uses are definitely not the same as in the anime. Especially his ace, elemental hero Terra Firma. My main problem is that at the beginning there was just no introduction. Maybe it was just under the assumption that the readers would have already seen the anime. Maybe they just didn't want to waste time going over the same things the anime did. It was even mentioned that Jaden beat Crowler in his exam, so that's the same. Though it's clear that not everything is the same. For example, Jaden does not beat Yugi. How do I know? Let's get into chapter 2. First off, not only is it never mentioned that he met Yugi, which would be a pretty big thing to leave out, but it's shown how Jaden received his winged Karibo, which he still has. One thing I didn't like was how we find out though, because it was just a narrator dumping it onto us. First page of chapter 2 is just, some cards have spirits. Jaden's winged Karibo is one of them. And that's not even an exaggeration, it's that cut and dry. Like I said, it's shown how he gets it later, but this was a weird way to first introduce Jaden's spirit card. But that's enough harshing on the manga for now, anyway. There's plenty of good in the plot to go over, so let's go. One great thing in the manga is that many of the characters get a lot of cool duels, and there's some great character work, which we'll talk characters a bit more in depth later. But these first few chapters, we get an extremely driven and smart Bastion, an extremely dedicated Alexis, a more formidable Cyrus, and a stone cold Chaz. Yes, the lack of introduction was weird, but through these first 9 chapters, we get a good idea of the types of characters our main cast are. Chapters 10 through 43. 10 through 43 is the best part of the manga. If I were to split the manga into arcs, I'd say chapters 1 through 9 were the introductory, 10 through 43 where we actually start making headway into the actual overarching story, and 44 through 64 is the final part of it, moving into the conclusion. In this arc, we get a good old-fashioned tournament, and nothing says Yu-Gi-Oh! Like a good old-fashioned opening arc tournament. The basic rundown is that Zane Kaiser Truesdale, older brother of Cyrus Truesdale, and one of Duel Academy's top 2 students, is returning from a sabbatical in America, bringing 2 students from the American Duel Academy he went to with him. Upon his homecoming, the Chancellor decides to hold a tournament, with the grand prize being a duel against Kaiser himself. The arc is great, and I think just the setup alone of having a whole tournament just to gauge who should give Kaiser a welcome back duel really shows just how low his nuts hang compared to everyone else. Keep in mind that he's still a student. And besides hyping up Zane, this arc does a lot of other things right. First off, I thought its revisiting of the sands of Egypt was executed much better than in the anime. My meaning, the villain does have ties to Egypt, and comparatively to the anime, which had knockoff Millennium items and knockoff God cards, the manga introduced ties to Egypt that were more original and a new line of rare cards. It also gave Jaden a backstory, which gives us that explanation as to why Jaden has a spirit card and where his deck and love of dueling come from. The final duels were also awesome, and the villain is well built up while staying mysterious, being some person or entity able to evoke and give the ability to evoke shadow games to others. This arc was fun, and it did a good job building up an interesting plot to be fleshed out later. It gave some more development to characters including Jaden, and it really delivered with Zane, who was basically the goalpost of the whole arc. Final arc. As I said when going over 10 through 43, a lot was built up over that arc to go into this arc. Unfortunately, it was pretty disappointing. This final arc felt really rushed. There are some things that are lightly gone over, but nowhere near enough that they should be. Things that characters do or say not being fleshed out. Characters that don't do much. There's just generally a lot more that I wanted to see and that should have been shown. Though I will say, the final duel, while somewhat weird because Jaden went through a random deck switch in an amount of time where he shouldn't have been able to, was really cool, especially the way it ended. But still, the final arc was not great. Just felt too rushed. Cards. The decks of the characters in the manga differ from those in the anime. Though, instead of those cards, I'm focusing on the special cards, a la Egyptian Gods, Sacred Beasts, and Sign of Dragons, the Planet series. I don't get too in-depth about them, but even if I did, there wouldn't be much to talk about. The origin of these cards was briefly mentioned in one page, and what was most special about them was mostly that they were a part of a limited run of cards. Something that happened in real life, say if you won a tournament, it's actually how some of the characters got these cards. But in the end, it actually seemed like it was more about the duelists wielding the cards, more than the cards themselves. Especially when close to the end, they were just churning out planet card appearances so they get the whole solar system. Just for those cards to be around for like a page or two and never be seen again, so kinda meh. Characters of the good. If I were to pick the characters whose manga counterparts stuck out the most, it'd be Jaden, Chaz, Cyrus, Zane, and Atticus. Jaden because of the backstory we get, Chaz because his character is the most polarizingly different, Cyrus because his manga version was actually able to put Jaden and Chaz on the back foot and make them sweat, Zane because he's still so cool, and Atticus because he's in a completely different league than in the anime. Jaden is pretty self-explanatory based on what I already said. He's given a backstory, and I really enjoyed it. Chaz, though, is easily the most different character. Chaz in the anime was an Obelisk Blue and defeated the entirety of an academy with cards he scrounged around for, so it's not like he wasn't already a formidable duelist, but his manga self is a completely different beast. His role as rival is way more clear-cut, and his overall importance to the story is much greater. And while he never once says Chaz it up, he's still extremely cool, and he's still one of my favorites. Then we get to Cyrus, which I also pretty much summed up, but he's still a little dopey, but also feels more serious. His showings against Jaden, the main character, and Chaz, a more serious and developed version of that, really raised Cyrus stocks up. I also include Zane because I just really like Zane, but the hype around him in the manga was also pretty cool. So was the duel at the end of the Homecoming tournament arc. And as for Atticus, in the anime he used a red-eye deck and was kind of a slacker, but besides when he got taken over with Agnes. But in the manga, while he's still a chill, go-with-the-flow type guy, he's put on the same level as Kaiser, and is known as the King Atticus. He also sports an interesting manga-exclusive deck called the Sphere Archetype. He's 10 times cooler, and he's 10 times the dueler. Characters, the bad. While there is plenty of good in terms of the characters, there's also plenty of bad. Zane and Atticus were on the good, but they also have a place here in the bad. Zane had one duel, and didn't really do anything besides that, and the duel was also short. It was a cool showing, but I would have liked to see it be expanded upon. Would have thought we would have seen more of him in the final arc, but no dice. Atticus also only really had one duel, one real duel at least. He had two others, but one was interrupted and the other was off screen besides the end. And remember, these were the top two duelists of Duel Academy. It's not just them. Lack of any actual screen time to do anything is an issue a lot of characters have. Pretty much everyone who was introduced in the final arc faces this problem. The same transitions from the anime were introduced here and they all fell flat. Adrian had some backstory added in that fell flat. Jesse was just kinda there. He also had a deck change that felt weird. It's kinda like Jane and his heroes. It felt weird to just give him a completely different deck. Jim Crocodile Cook was very different, but it also felt like his character would have done better with some more screen time. Axel seemed like he was going to be a lot more important to the plot as his backstory directly tied into the current events of said story. But right after his backstory was shown, he just got shafted. And then there's Aster, who, I bet you're already tired of hearing me say this, but felt like he was going to be a lot more important to the plot than he actually was. It definitely feels like there was supposed to be more to their characters that was supposed to be fleshed out, but just wasn't. This is possibly due to time constraints, though their main purpose just became showing off the planet cards. After they didn't do much of anything. And as for the Japanese Duel Academy students, I mean, Jasmine just sucked up all the wins for himself, so I'm gonna say. Duels! And of course, he can't make a video reviewing Yu-Gi-Oh! Without going over the duels. To keep it short and sweet, that's what the manga does. The duels take place in about 1 to 3 chapters, though this being a manga, it obviously wouldn't take as much time as the anime had the ability to do. And they're good. It's hard to go in depth about duels, especially since I'm just talking about how I felt about the duels across all of the series, not, analyzing the duels themselves. So, instead of stressing myself trying to go in depth, I'm gonna do like the manga does and keep it short and sweet. I like them. The duels are fun and entertaining. I really like Chad vs. Jaden. Jaden vs. Chaz 2, Zane's duel, Jaden vs. Cyrus, and the final duel. On the negative side, the duels in the final arc face the same problem as the characters, being that all were cut short, and we only saw the beginning, the planet cards being summoned, and then the end. At the very end of the manga, a duel I really wanted to see we didn't get to, kind of like how Jaden vs. Yugi got cut short, but at least we got to see some of it. But negativity aside, one of the best duels was the final duel. Besides that, there were also a lot of other fun duels, fun cards, and fun plays. And overall, the GX manga was a very fun read. This was my first Yu-Gi-Oh manga, and after rewatching the anime of Duel Monsters, I'm probably going to start R, which is the Duel Monsters manga, and then move on to the rest. If you're curious where I'm finding the manga, I'm reading them on Viz, and this is not a sponsorship, but I will recommend it because it's only $2 a month, and you get access to a ton of manga, including on the Yu-Gi-Oh mangas. The character changes for Chaz and Cyrus are definitely two of the best parts of reading the manga for me, just because the characters felt so much cooler. No offense, Anime Chaz it up. That's you though, Anime Cyrus. Never really liked you. Didn't dislike you, but still. In both anime and manga Jaden, you are the best. You're probably better though, Anime Jaden, because you had your whole character arc through season 3 and 4. We didn't even get any epilogue with you, Manga Jaden, so, you sure you just kind of ended after your final duel? Yeah, but, with all that, definitely check out the manga, and the anime if you haven't for some reason, and, well, get your game on! Back in class and no tossers, some good miss with tough times, hard clubs, we'll take them all together. Right now, let's go, Yugioh GX, Generation X.